All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner today, and it's not getting any better for Michigan football right now. It is a tough situation, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to try to talk through this, even though I think both of us said to each other at some point this weekend, like, we're just dreading hopping on the podcast, that's not a place that you want to be in like week 7. So, but it is what it is.
No, I mean, I think I thought Jared Goff played pretty good. I thought Gibbs had a great game.
I was in Buffalo. I went to the Bills game, which met Josh Allen, which was awesome. They scored a bunch of points, and the Bills Mafia is like one of the most incredible experiences ever. So I did, outside of like a 3-hour stretch on Saturday, I had a pretty good weekend. Definitely didn't think about this game for, so much longer and, think about all the what ifs. I would never do that.
No, man. I mean, I went to Meijer, pick up some snacks, go take over to the watch party. These pita chips, just ridiculously good, man. Like at Meijer, just so good. The Red Wings won over the weekend as well, I believe. So, I mean, do you want to talk about Brian Branch? Like, he played good.
He is incredible. He is incredible.
I really don't know what more at this point that we can say about this current Michigan team. I'm a reactionary person. So Saturday, I'm trying not to be. I like to think I have good self-awareness when it comes to, like, I have good emotional intelligence. Like, I can tell what bothers me and what frustrates me.
Right.
I don't really know where to go from here. I don't know if I see anything that gives me any sort of hope or anything that I can hang my hat on and say, hey, this team, at least at this group or this guy, is getting better.
Right.
This guy is playing better football today than he was in September. I don't know if I can say that about anybody. Like, I really don't.
Which is crazy because of the talent that you have on the roster, right?
Yeah.
And even like, you'd hoped, I think we went into this year like, okay, you've got, 5 first-round draft picks, right? Or close to it. I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out. Nobody's draft stock is rising currently at the moment, I don't think. Maybe Josiah Stewart. Probably.
Josiah Stewart is the best player on this team at the moment.
He definitely is.
And he's the guy playing the hardest. Colston made
Colston's
a huge doing There's not much, right? Like, you can't pin much on some of these guys. I mean, they're doing what they can, and they're just not getting a lot of help from areas where they would need help to shine. Josiah Stewart's the one guy that's really flashing. I mean, Mason Graham is Mason Graham. I think those guys having to play a lot of snaps is probably, what we thought in the offseason, maybe these guys are conditioned to play 60 snaps a game. I mean, they just don't have the ability. And Rayshon Benny's out on Saturday, so you're going deep when you don't have a lot of depth, and so you're kind of relying on those guys. I mean, defensively, I thought this was maybe one of their better performances. They give up that long fake punt, which is like situational awareness.
Just a dagger, dude, dagger.
Like, at this point, when I was watching, not to go back to the Lions, but when they tried that fake punt, like, I saw immediately that the Vikings had one guy deep, and they had like two high safeties. Like, they were just playing a defensive front against that fake punt. It's like, why don't you just do that? Michigan has blocked one punt this year, and it was because the Minnesota player just was like, I don't know if he understood like what his role was on a punt. Otherwise, the special teams have been pretty mediocre.
Mediocre is putting it. I mean, Zavada has been awesome. Tommy Doman has really, really, really struggled, if we're being honest. I just think that they, a year ago, our special teams we had a really good team, and still our special teams was sometimes the best part of our game, right? And so that struggled. I mean, I don't know. We're all over the map right now in terms of what we're talking about and all that stuff. But I think that, like, let's just start with vibes. I want to start there.
Low.
Because the vibes are so low. There's like, I like to use the term juice. Like, you got to have some juice to you, right? Like, do you have any juice? Are you going in with with like all right, let's get fired up. We've got grit. We're gonna go on and we're gonna play with an enthusiasm known to mankind. Where that is nowhere to be found. The enthusiasm known to mankind is currently in Los Angeles.
Well, no, I think Michigan is known to mankind because it's so low that you see, people.
It's everybody's known that level of enthusiasm.
Yes. Yeah, I don't really know what else to kind of talk about. I mean, I think I'm done picking this team to win games in our prediction segments. You thought, okay, you struggle at the end of the game against Minnesota, but you win and you're 4-1. You're undefeated in the Big Ten. It's like, okay, you can kind of build on this, right? And we talked about, hey, you should beat Washington. You should beat Illinois. You should beat Michigan State. And you should be 7-1 going into the matchup with Oregon. Now, you're staring down the barrel of being 4-4 with Oregon looming, with Indiana, who's number 13 in the country in the polls right now, just completely decimated Nebraska. Remember those the charts from Stato War on Twitter of how bad did my team get beaten? You know how Michigan was on that far right column every week?
Every week.
Indiana was on the farthest right, and it wasn't even close. They beat the shit out of Nebraska. And so you're looking at going to Bloomington. You're probably going to lose to Indiana. You've got Northwestern at home, which that might be a rock fight. Not even a dog fight. That's going to be a rock fight. And then you go to Columbus. And so you're looking at this as worst case scenario 4-8, best case scenario 6-6. Because I don't feel that there's any chance in hell that they beat Oregon or Indiana or Ohio State at this point. And the defense was okay on Saturday. They were not the issue. They played well given the circumstances of the offense continually giving the ball away. The offense got bailed out by a holding call on Illinois on the interception where I don't know. It looked like John O'Corn in the Ohio State game in 2017. I don't know.
There was a point there where it should have been like, 3 turnovers in like 5 plays or something like that.
Yes.
At least that's what it felt like.
Yes. So you can't, I don't know. I really don't know what they do. I don't know what the solution is. There's got to be a lot of changes at the end of the year. Like there has to be minimum multiple changes on this current staff. I think some guys are probably stretched too thin. You think about Lamar Morgan coaching the entire secondary. We thought he'd be okay to be able to do that because he was a defensive coordinator in the Sun Belt. And he's a guy who Jesse Minter would have hired as his, safeties coach or corners coach had Jesse Minter still been here and needed to replace somebody, right? But when you watch this team, I just don't see any growth or development from the secondary. I think the defensive line, Esposito is probably the best position coach on this staff at the moment. I think they're the ones kind of really carrying their weight. Maybe not making the flash plays, but they're about the only group that I look at with any sort of positivity at the moment of like, okay, these guys are pretty good and maybe not living up to the billing that we thought they would, those All-American type of guys in the center, but the center of the defensive line. But Josiah Stewart's played really well. I like what I see from TJ Guy. So honestly, at this point, outside of Lou Esposito, I don't think anybody should be safe. And I hate to call for people's jobs, and that's not necessarily what I want to do. I
agree, but we're to that point, man. I think that, to put it simply, like we're doing less with more, right? We said it on when you and I were just chatting pre-show, like there really aren't many guys that have made any types of progression. If anything, it's regression. Guys are getting worse. And when you're sitting here with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, like, yes, I agree with you. They're not the problem, right? There are a lot of other problems, but if you can point to anybody that has gotten better with this coaching staff, I'd be shocked. Josiah Stewart's the only one. He's playing phenomenal, but he also, let's be honest, played really well last year too. So it's not like he's like made a huge leap. You know what I mean?
I think just to stick on that point, I think TJ Guy's playing well.
TJ Guy's playing well.
I think Benny's back to what he was, and so yeah, I don't know, man. There are moments of brilliance from that interior D-line duo. Obviously, with Graham and Grant, both guys are going to be very, very good productive pros. But yeah, I'm with you. I I don't see anybody that's gotten better.
I think what's going to be really frustrating for myself and a lot of Michigan fans next year is watching if Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland, Josiah, if all those guys just ball out at the next level.
They're going to.
And
that's what's so frustrating.
They're going to, then that's going to be like, it was kind of like the Nico Collins situation, right? Where you're like, hey guys, Nico Collins is one of the top receivers in the NFL right now. We couldn't figure out how to get the ball to him more than 3 times a game, right? And right now you're seeing it's, similar in the fact of like, hey, you've got a ton of talent all over the field. You can't figure out how to win a ball game with them, right? And I ultimately, like, every single thing that happens on the field right now comes back to coaching. I agree with you. I hate to call for people's jobs. I believe that Sharon Moore can be a good football coach and probably will be a good football coach at some point. The reality of the situation is he doesn't have any experience as a head coach.
Right. This is all uncharted territory.
He learned under one of the best coaches in the history of football, right, in Jim Harbaugh. But at the end of the day, it's different when it's just you, when you're the guy, right? And I think that again, we've talked about this on a lot of shows. There are a ton of variables as to why this staff is the way it is right now and this roster is the way it is right now. But there are teams out there, including the one that you're about to go up against in the Michigan State Spartans, that have the exact same situation and are showing great signs of life. They're showing a ton of progression. Washington under Jed Fish is the same exact situation, right? Now, both those teams did get a quarterback, which would change a lot, right? If you would have gotten the Will Rogers or even an Aiden Childs, who is making strides, then that changes a lot. But I'm just saying there are teams around the country that had the same situation with a head coach leaving and a ton of the roster, and they're playing a hell of a lot better than Michigan. So there's the caveat of, okay, they got there in late November, early December, right? So they had time to build things out, and they weren't focused on winning a national championship. And again, if you told me, hey, you're going to win national championships, you got to go 0-12 the next year, whatever, like you take the national championship, right? So we're living that hypothetical of one of those Twitter polls of like, you win the national championship, but your team sucks the next year. Okay, sure. But like you look at Indiana, like how quickly did that team get turned around? They were brutal last year. And Chris Signetti comes in, and he's a guy who's won everywhere he's been. And I think he's very cocky, and I kind of like it, honestly, until he beats Michigan. Something that Indiana football has never seen before. It's like, why is Indiana football talking shit right now? What is going on?
And he is spot on, man. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you look at what Jim Harbaugh's done, and trying to replace that with anybody, let alone a first-time head coach who's in his late 30s. Like, it's just a tall order. And maybe we were just sipping a lot of the Kool-Aid this offseason, right? We're coming in.
I think just in general, like, you saw what Sherrone Moore did in those last 3 games, Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. And you're like, all right, this is the guy, right? Which I don't like. He was the obvious choice at the time, unless you could maybe get a Kalen DeBoer. I have no idea if that was a thing, right? Like, some people speculate that we didn't even reach out, or, you could have had him. I have no idea. I don't think anybody really knows. But I think in general, like, it's not like he was the choice at the time. You were going to go with Sherrone Moore. He proved it in those games. He won that coaching job, and Jim Harbaugh said, hey, this is the guy, right? Yeah. So, like, you can – hindsight's 20/20, and you can say, oh, Ward sucks and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, like, at the time, everyone's like, yeah, that's our guy, right? And so I think you're just going through a ton of growing pains, and unfortunately, you're just not playing up to the level that you need to play. And I think what's most frustrating to me is every single thing that we're bad at is a controllable. It is turnovers, penalties, being ready, preparedness, right? Like, anything mental, we're not good at. Having grit, we have 0 grit, which I thought that, like, from a culture standpoint, Sherrone was like going to be like even a better culture fit than Jim Harbaugh, honestly. And none of that has come true. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing for me.
Yeah, well, I wonder too. This is the least amount of points Michigan scored since Brady Hoke's last year in 2014. So, like, do you need a complete reset of the offseason program, and do you need to do the Harbaugh thing where you just kick guys' asses for however many months until spring ball and just weed out guys who want to be here and who love football? Right? Is that the thing? Is that how you take this thing? Because Jim Harbaugh coming in, Michigan had gone. Well, under Brady Hoke, it was 11-2, 8-5, 7-6, 5-7, and a lot of the same issues that plague those teams are plaguing this current team, with probably more talent on this team, especially defensively. I mean, that 2014 Michigan team had some guys that would turn out to be really good players under Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh comes in and goes 10-3, 10-3, and potentially again, play away from going to the playoffs in 2016 in year 2. So. Like, the way that this team plays is just very uncharacteristic, because even when Michigan was, 10-3, 9-4, and you're pissed because they're not winning the big game on the schedule at the end of the year, they're at least beating teams that they have more talent in, and they're beating them convincingly.
Those teams would beat the shit out of Illinois at Illinois.
Absolutely. I mean, even the 2019 team that wasn't that great still beat them by 17 in Champaign with Shea Patterson at quarterback. So I'll tell you what, I'd take Shea on this team. Oh my God! Why take
Jay would say,
I'd take John O'Corn.
How many wins does Shea Patterson get you this year? Like if you're talking like WAR, like baseball, WAR, right?
To this point, it's 6. It's 6-1 with average quarterback play. This team is 6-1.
Correct. And I think we've got to talk about it. Like, again, hindsight's 2020, but you're looking at it like, man, did you ever really need to move on from Davis Warren? Like, you knew what Alex Orji was. We got to the point in 3 starts from Alex Orji, and you literally couldn't throw the ball with him, right? And then Tuttle comes in. Obviously, he had a phenomenal comeback game and in Washington, then made backbreaking mistakes. But I mean, let's be real, Tanner. What he did on Saturday, unfortunately, he just there are multiple times where Colston Loveland's wide open and he's not even close to hitting him. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and we can I want to group this in, I guess, because you're down 21-7. You're driving. You're taking 9 minutes off the clock, by the way. You're snapping the ball with single digits.
Your text when you said, like, we're snapping the ball with 5 seconds left in the play clock. Like, dude, we're
huddling.
We're acting like we're sucking clock because we're up 21.
Right. So you go down. You get down to the red zone, and I have not rewatched the game. I don't know if I need to put myself through that. But I feel like they were moving the ball and they were running the ball. So, hey, obviously when you run the ball, clock's going to come off, but I wish they would have been a little bit more, quick getting to the line, and they're substituting so that Illinois is late substituting and they're dictating the clock situation on the play clock. And so they're just wasting time, but you get down there and I feel like you get away from the run game in the red zone. And then I think there was maybe a sack and you kick a field goal, gets blocked, but you're down 14 late third, I think, maybe early fourth. I don't remember exactly when. What is the point of going from down 14 to down 11?
Right.
Because either way, this offense is going to need to score 2 touchdowns. So what is the thought process of, well, we can kick a field goal, and yeah, maybe you can get a 2-point conversion with another field goal, but how many drives are you going to have? And then how many times are you going to be able to get down inside the red zone with this offense? You have to be able to take advantage of it. You have to come up with something creative. There was some stuff that I liked. I liked earlier in the game when Michigan needed a 3rd and long. They did kind of like this pop pass to Colston Loveland, almost like a power design to the right side. I thought that was great. Problem is that doesn't happen often enough. This team is so boring. They're so predictable on offense. And so when you get down inside the red zone, where is the creativity? Where are the things that worked so well last year? Obviously, different players are not as talented. I totally get that, but you can create issues with the defense that are going to get guys open, right? Like, where is the orbit motion that Roman Wilson scored a touchdown on against Alabama? Like, do something like that. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least try something other than just continually running it. And then when the run's working, you just start trying to throw it in the red zone. Like, I don't understand.
What, like, how have we not learned that when things get tough, you just give it to Khalil Mullings? How have we not learned
he
that?
should get 35 carries a game at this point.
Literally, like, just ride him. And so I was at the Bills-Titans game yesterday. It was very fun. What's funny was that the Bills ended up winning by, I don't know, 17 points or something. But the first quarter, the Titans were just thrashing the Bills with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. And I think he only they scored 10 points in their first two drives. I think he only threw like one pass across the middle over 10 yards. Everything else was a like dink and dunk. They'd slip a tight end out. They'd slip the running back out. They'd have a little crossing route. And I'm sitting there, and then they'd like run on 2nd and 7 and get 8 yards. And I'm sitting there like, we don't need to be like, you don't have to be throwing the ball 15, 20 yards downfield if you don't have a quarterback that can do it. But like, they tried with Colston to start getting him open in the second half, I thought. But like, before that, what's the play? What's the plan? Like, why can't you be creative enough to try and get Samaj Morgan in space? Like,
I don't know.
I don't know.
It feels like the plan at this point is to just be like, oh, look, we're trying to throw the ball to sell to recruits, which I'd rather win games, but that's just me. Like, is that the plan? Like how many times did Tull throw it? 32 or something like that? How many times did JJ McCarthy throw the damn ball 32 times in a game?
Very, very few. Very few.
Right? And like, obviously, yeah, you don't have Blake Corum, you don't have Zinner, Keegan, Olu and Nugent, but like, I don't know, man. I'm just out of answers, right? Like, I'm out of answers. The staff's out of answers. I don't know if they have any way that they can fix this thing
I think
at all.
One of the things that it's very obvious to me while watching this team is there isn't one person, coach or player, that believes that they can go out and win.
That's kind of crazy.
Don't you feel that? Don't you watch them and you're like, they're sitting there looking to somebody on their left or right saying, hey, do you have the answer? Because I don't know what I don't think any of that offense said, like, they're not going out and being like, we're going to go fucking score this drive. Nobody's sitting there and saying that.
Well, I can tell you that from the top, they don't have answers, because I just saw earlier today that Sharon Moore said that they don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be, and they're going to figure it out this week.
It's week 8.
Is it? That's week 9?
Week 9?
I don't know. Whatever. It's almost November. Honestly, at this point, every November I look forward to the Michigan-Ohio State game. I think this year I'm looking forward to some sneaker releases is what I got going on in November, Justin. That's what I'm looking forward to the most, man. So I'm just down. I'm just really just down horrendously at this point, bro. Like, I really don't know what I can, again, hang my hat on or be excited about the future, because so many guys are gone after this year. So it's like,
that's the thing is, what does next year look like, man? Unless you have
you have to go full portal, like crazy. I mean, you have to like flip the entire roster essentially, and probably flip both coordinators, right? Like, I mean, it's tough because I don't know, man. I mean, Wink Martindale is $2.3 million, and Kirk Campbell is. I don't know how much I can pin on him because of the quarterback play, but at the same time, it's just been atrocious, right? Like, it's just been awful. And also a guy who, couldn't cut it at Old Dominion. So I keep throwing my hands up because this is literally, I have no idea what they can do, but it's going to be bad.
Here's the thing too. Here's where we're at with going into next season. I mean, you're Colston Loveland said this season, they're just going to try and wreck people's seasons. Right. So our season's gone. You're playing to ruin other people's seasons. You're not playing for yourself anymore. So I'm looking to 2025. If you get rid of both coordinators and flip the roster, like we both just said, we think is necessary, you're back to year 0. You're not in year 2, right? You're taking a step back, and you have to like take a step back to take a step forward. But it's like, instead of what we could have had with like, hey, what, even if they went 8-4 this year and it's like, oh, but we saw like signs of progression and it's like, all right, we kind of figured things out in some games, then I would be like, okay, I'm okay with that. We can work with that. You took a huge step back. You're gonna have to clean house, and then you're in year 0, and it's like, okay, now what? Right now you're building from nothing, and you have to establish the culture with new coaches, new players. I mean, it's just really freaking hard, dude. Really hard.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when it's not just a continuity hire, but it is part of it as to why you hire Cherishing, is to keep the culture, to have that continuity, the consistency that the team has had over the last few years. If that's not there, then like I don't know. So it's really tough to think about what next year looks like. But I will say I saw a quote from Cherishing where I don't have the exact quote. I don't feel like looking it up because it'll waste a lot of time. But basically what he was saying is like, I know what the standard is at Michigan, and that we're not living up to it. And so the way that it was worded, from what I remember when I read it, I think our boy Dick Stauskas kind of said something similar, but like it kind of gives me hope that like Cherishing is like going to be cutthroat. You have to be. You can't be boys, right? Because if you're not winning, who cares, right? Like you have to fight for your life when you're the head football coach at a major program like Michigan. And if you're not getting it done, you got to say, sorry, boys, I got to get guys in here that can win. And so you've got to be a dick. You've got to be cutthroat. You've got to just say, hey, your leash is gone, man. 100%. I saw enough. So going into, because look, Michigan's not, unless it's just completely terrible, which has already been pretty bad. But if it's just, I don't know, if you lose out, then maybe. But I just don't think that Michigan's a type of institution that will make a decision like that after 1 year, unless it's just like 100-0 to IU. Like,
I mean, even let's be honest, like the basketball team was 8-24, and they didn't make a move until after the season, and that was absolutely as bad as it could get, right?
Right, but so you're thinking going into year 2, you have to flip it. You got to pay for the best assistants. You got to just go poach people. You've got to go poach people from other teams' rosters. You've got to get quarterbacks. I hate trying to get all your offensive linemen from the portal, but you got to fill in some gaps, right? You got to hope that some guys are going to be able to be ready to play next year, and then fill in the gaps, right? If you need a new center, which, look, let's be honest, you probably do. You need a guard, whatever. Like, but you want to have some sort of continuity on that offensive line of like, okay, we're not just having 5 brand new starters from different programs. You want to have a couple guys that have been seasoned, had been with Michigan for a few years. So you've got to go try to find that. You've got to get like 4 or 5 wide receivers. You've got to get probably a couple quarterbacks, to be honest with you. You got to get some running backs. Like, I mean,
where don't you
tight ends? Maybe the secondary, if you can get some like development and coaching out of that. Maybe the corners, because Jair Hill, still a young kid. Josiah Edmond is a freshman coming up who was a big time guy who was a freshman on this year's team.
Maybe Rod Moore comes back.
That would be huge. That would be huge for next year's team if he were willing and able to come back and put another year of film on tape, because he's just that guy. I think we miss him so much. I mean, I don't know how much it would matter because his offense is so putrid. But
it would be awesome to have him come back because he knows like what a winning team looks like.
Absolutely, he would be 2025's Aiden Hutchinson, right?
Right. He knows what
culture guy,
preparation, like good preparation in order to win a football game looks like, and that's what we're like missing right now for some reason. I don't know. The one thing I really get concerned about too is, and I'm not saying this is true, and so I don't want it to come off like I'm calling him out, but like Will Johnson, heading to the sideline, I have no idea what his injury is, but like, would you blame him for sitting out?
No, I was going to ask that in this podcast. Is that the last time we see him in a Michigan uniform?
I don't think it's crazy to ask that. Like, and like, I just think that you're just going to see that. That's 2024 college football as well, is like, hey, if you're not on a winning team that's going to go to the playoff and you're about to make $30 million in the NFL and be a top 5 pick, it's like, is it worth it to go, possibly get injured more and lose millions of dollars?
Yeah.
But then it's like, you should probably forgo your collective check.
Yeah. Like how does that work out? Yeah. I mean, a lot of these stuff.
Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say a lot of these juniors who were sophomores last year, their legacy is cemented, right? But you just wish that
sucks
they
to go
would
out
go
with
with
like a little sour taste.
yeah, I was gonna say go out with a whimper, right? Like you're so good as freshmen and sophomores, and that's the disappointing thing because we know how good they are. We know how good they can play football, and it just has not been that this year. Will's made some plays, guys have made some plays, but it's just not been, what Michigan's expected, and honestly, probably the worst Michigan defense outside of COVID and since Brady Hoke, probably. I don't know. That's what it feels like, at least.
And I put this question up there. I mean, where is Jaden Davis?
I don't know if I even care to see him this year, not because I don't think he's good, but because I don't necessarily think there's any reason to ruin him and put him in a Bryce Young type of situation, right? Like you put him in front of a battle line, he sees Ghost, he's ruined, right? Like it's just a tough spot to put a true freshman 19-year-old kid in.
But like, also it doesn't matter if we win the games, honestly, right? So is it like, I don't know. I see it both ways. I definitely agree with you. I don't want to ruin him for sure. But I also what's the plan for this weekend? That's my question. What's the plan? Who you're going to trot out one of those three guys and be like, hey, this is a good option to win. Can you look me in the eye and say, yeah, one of these three is a good option for us to go and beat a 4-3 Michigan State team?
Yeah, I mean, they just beat Iowa.
I know
right? Iowa's probably a better version of Michigan.
That is sickening to hear.
First couple weeks of the season, Michigan's a better version of Iowa. Absolutely not. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they've had a plan all season or since the off season started, because you go and you don't go in and get a portal guy at the quarterback position, which we know their options were limited. We've talked about this a ton and we've probably beaten it to death, but I don't know if there's been a cohesive plan all the past 9 months, Justin, at this point.
It does feel like they're firing from the hip a little bit, right? It's like, what's, I don't know what is the plan? Because I don't see, like, there's no identity. There's no, when you're moving forward, I just I don't know. I'm sitting here looking at this game that's staring us down on Saturday, and I think I get the feeling, this is how I feel too, but I get the feeling that this team is also like, shit, they're like scared of Michigan State coming in because they're scared to lose, right? Like, that is sickening to me. We're 10 months out of a natty where we beat them 49-0, Tanner.
I was there.
I was there. I had an incredible time. And the difference between those two teams was insanity. It was a college football team playing a high school team, was legitimately what it was. And now you're 10 months later and you're looking at Michigan State with really no talent, not no talent, but minimal talent coming into Ann Arbor. And even though we're, I don't know, 7-point favorites or whatever, right now it came out. I was shocked at the line when it opened up, I think 7.5 or something, or 6.5. And even with that, I feel that our team is sitting there like, shit, we do not want to go out there and play this game.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping.
I get 2017 vibes.
I felt okay going into 2017. This is probably the worst I felt going into this game since like 2014.
DG.
Probably the State game.
Gardner.
Joe Bolton stake in the ground, tent stake.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild to apologize for that, by the way, but that was 10 years ago, so who gives a shit? I was kind of hoping that the Chargers had their bye week this week or something, and Jim could come and give a speech or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Ben Herbert could come and do something. I just don't. Yeah, there's just no juice. I can't imagine what the big house is going to be like on Saturday. Might start to hear some boo birds. I can tell you that because they've been away from home. I mean, the last time we saw them, they were 4-1. Leaving the big house, getting ready to go on a 2-game road trip, I guess, with the bye week in the middle.
It is crazy because you left that game and you're like, dude, the whole season's ahead of us, and you can do whatever, right? You can
Everything was in front of them, and then they just were absolutely terrible against Washington for the most part, and just brutal against Illinois. I mean, I don't even know how to put it into words. So yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like Saturday, man.
I apologize to our listeners because this has to be the most depressing podcast of all time.
Sometimes it's like, I like to listen, I like to feel, it makes me feel alive,
I know you just sometimes it's like a hate listen for your own team.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I need to vent. Like, I was dreading coming on here and talking to you about this, but also it's like it's therapeutic to get it out.
We might get like 10K views, honestly. Like the two post loss, or this will be the third, but the post loss podcasts, like Texas one was like 10,000, and I think the Washington was like 4,000 or 5,000. So. People love to enjoy our misery, which is fine. But guess what? Those people listening, you're still not going to get an undefeated national champion this year. You're not. So never forget that. We may be dog shit right now, but don't forget who dog walked you the last 3 football seasons and ended your hopes of winning national championships 3 times. I guess Georgia did, but we exposed some things. Look, Michigan's not great right now. It is what it is. But just remember, because you slid with a second left, you're not getting that undefeated national championship. You're not replicating what Michigan did last year in a peak roster. So just remember that as you're listening to this and you're enjoying us being, in depths of sorrow. Just remember that.
Shout out to our listeners from Columbus, Ohio, because it's our
number 2 market.
Our number 2 market. Y'all. So thank you. Appreciate you guys. Also, I was asking my Bills friends this weekend. They're like diehard Bills the same way that we are about Michigan. And, they've been like inches away from winning Super Bowl and trying to beat Pat Mahomes. And I said, if you guys were to win, like if I told you, hey, you're going to go win the Super Bowl this year, but next year you're going to go like 5-11, and they all like stopped me before I even posed the question. Like, yes, we'll take the Super Bowl 1,000%. And I was like, all right, that answers it. Then I'm going to take my natty. I'm good. I'm not good. I'm not complacent, but I'm you'll take it 10 times out of 10. So
no, absolutely, man. I mean, Michigan has 2 national championships in my lifetime, which is the same as a lot of other people, unless you're born in like 1970 from other fan bases. So, sure. If some fan bases you may not have any in your lifetime, So I've got 2. I wasn't conscious in 1997, but it still happened when I was alive. So, they come around every so often, and sometimes you got to deal with some shit, right? 98, Michigan starts off 0-2. So, it's not like we're not used to these things. But
it happens. It's hard to win.
It is. It's very hard to win a national championship. Our friends down south really know that. And our friends about an hour and a half north of us really know that. So, no, I mean, I'm just going to keep talking about last year. Just going to keep reminiscing. I have like 17 different national championship hats that I can wear to just keep the vibes high. So, I'm not going to talk myself into this one.
Natty year, like Michigan natty year, sales might be rising right now because it's just like,
Dick should have never went on sale last year or earlier this year. They had everything like 75% off, and I was just scooping it all up.
I think that people might be buying it more now because it's like, oh shit, I need to I need to just sit here and think about that.
Spin zone. Here's a spin zone. I really like to rebuild teams on NCAA. And so we've got the game back. You got a chance to rebuild Michigan, right? Normally I got to go to other teams because Michigan's pretty good and it's like kind of boring because I can just get all the recruits. You might need to knock a couple prestigious stars off us and let me go to work. Let me get in there.
Let's get you in the lab. We'll put together a plan and get it over to the coaching staff and see.
I might just record some gameplay, put up a video how to fix Michigan's offense, and it's just me running with Clem Mullings every play. just see if it works.
He has 80 carries on the day.
Yep, 100%. 19 carries is not enough. His usage this year has been criminal. What do you know? When he came in and started getting the ball, the offense started moving. Crazy thought. Just from a guy who watches football, like maybe you should give it to one of your best players on offense, because getting the ball to Clem Mullings is a lot easier than getting it to Colson Loveland at this point. So unless you do that little end around reverse thing, which was, again, shout out Kirk because that was pretty cool.
Well, that's cool. All right. Well, we are going to have another pod out this week. We're actually going to have our friends from Spartans Illustrated to preview the Michigan State game. We are working on a campaign called Rivals for a Cause this week, raising money for the Mott Children's Hospital. And so we're teaming up with some Sparties here and going to try to have some fun with this. Okay. Going to try to have some fun, raise some money for a great cause. So we'll be having a fun get together at Pretzel Bell on Friday night as well. So come out and check us out. And if you can donate, we appreciate it. So we will be back to preview this Michigan State game.
Live pod
for sure. We'll be having some Hail IPA, some Sun Cruiser, Truly Hard Seltzer for sure. So we're gonna make the best of this. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay. Yep. It's going to be cold on Friday, by the way. So, we got to bundle up for the live pod outdoors. Saturday, high of 54, going to be a colder one. Layers,
I'll take it. If the sun can be out, yeah. The tailgate's going to be electric. I'll say that.
I'm going to need something to keep me warm.
We will. I can guarantee you there will be at least one victory on Saturday, and we will win the tailgate. I will win at least one game of Flip Cup. I've gotten good this year. That's maybe I need to suck at Flip Cup again. Maybe that's why Michigan is losing. Could you do that, please?
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yes. Also, basketball team feels like there's always an inverse, right? Basketball team's good. It's they look pretty good. I didn't get to watch, but I mean, I know Oakland lost a lot, but that's a team that went to the tournament last year and they beat the brakes off of them in an exhibition. So excited to watch these guys. Excited to try to see if I can find some highlights of that. I don't know if we'll have them, but basketball season is upon us.
I hate sitting here in October saying it's basketball season. But
God, it feels like 2014, 2020.
Yeah, that's where we are. The Dusty May era has begun. So we'll keep chugging along. So, all right, for us, you can follow us at Blue by 90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Blue by 90 Podcast on YouTube, and blueby90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.